Yeah, I kind of wanted to get this in a little bit and think about it. I might do it a couple times before I actually do anything with it, but just think about that Oceanfront Property um, song by George Strait. But anyway, it's kind of like certain factors involving a little bit of humor about the oceanfront property in the way of like what sanitation means to um, quite a bit about it. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I was thinking about that as a little bit more than sanitation or commonwealth. Commonwealth in a way that terminology can be found. Um, a real seeking each out, seeking each out find thing. It's like one of those really not really easy to find in the way of what commonwealth and sanitation would suggest, even to the 13 colonies of American history, in the way of international financial management and international banking systems, kind of identifying what a reservation, an implementation, in political science terminology, or a reserve is, in the way of what might even reflect aggregates, the way of like domestic monetary and gross national product of importing and exporting that way, even warehousing like that, or not necessarily an economic plea bargain of a um, Ponzi scheming, raffling, voucher, auctioneering, clearance, and warehouse, but the Commonwealth in a way. But yeah, so like the thing about the a color code of like a toilet, yeah, sanitation in a way. Um, yeah, I mean, there's really more to it than computer literacy and the Abraham Lincoln night vision, um, Art Linkletter, the Lincoln Linkletter like connection, right? Yeah, so or the um, finer arts and humanities theme and question of the century, is that invisible ink or glow in the dark toilet paper, or or is that like really my 1040 easy and all that stuff about it. But anyway, it's kind of like I was thinking about that song by George Strait. Got some oceanfront property in Arizona. On top of this toilet seat, you can see the steam. Got some oceanfront property in Arizona. If you smell that, I'll throw in the toilet paper in for free. And then it goes on a little bit to some other factors, and it's got some oceanfront property in Arizona. Or is it the Freddie Prince Chico Stick Society? Got some oceanfront property in Arizona. If the drum major control that, I'll throw in a perfect 10-10. And I'm kind of like, I'm still working on this one part right here. If the drum major control that, I'll throw in a perfect 10-10 panoramic peripheral axis in for free. So I'm kind of like trying to decide and try and get that information in right there at that point right there, because it's kind of like if you remember like Chico and the Man and Freddie Prinze, um, yeah, there was like quite a bit of humor about the Latin America and Latino and Hispanic in that way, and what the Apple iPhone SE seems to be considerable amount of what color coded like SAN software, um, storage area networks, as well as securities and annuities, and where I'm at really kind of like, and it happened for quite some time, but I'm really been going a lot on my memory of like a lot of international financial management and terminology I like looked in, and what predominantly motivated by my interest in direction is studying like alphanumerics and linguistics, with practical application and integration and all that stuff really about it, and going through the circuit and what that is to electronic power and all kinds of stuff, and annotation seemingly to be a big deal about circuit. Even the tennis court of marginal spread terminology, all the way from whether it's two persons on the tennis court or four, or hypothetical metaphor, or what for it is written beyond the 12 Federal Reserve Banks of a religious thing of like the United States Code's annotated, and Zion that way, the 1,000 years of peace, and the Grover Cleveland U.S. $1,000 a minimum requirement, and the James Madison dollar, yeah, the James Madison $5,000, and that James Madison dollar, yeah. So yeah, it seemed to be a real deal about it. Yeah. So anyway, and what Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt, in 6 terms in presidential office of the New Deal Act and the FDIC. Um, yeah, there's quite a bit, and the attenuation and the UA of the word attenuation, alphanumerics 140, and processing speed of waveform, going beyond like the 13-band graphic equalizer, measuring cycles per second of frequency, and what a spectrum of bandwidth really means in an equalizer that way of 13 um, band graphic equalizer, generating, what a bandwidth is to spectrum. And it's really the same principle really in communications of, signal strength, and likewise in addition, how practical application is the motivation of even, going beyond really what seems to be, Japanese being 71 in Pearland, or, my thought of like the star furniture different by design thing. And in my mind, it's like the absolute values and the algorithm going all the way through calculus, algebra into beyond calculus, being 92, or the Pentagon, or reserve, reverse, and a reserve, reflecting some ideology beyond, a Christian religious thing about in God we trust, in the U.S. dollar. Being alphanumerics of like 92, reserve, reverse, and Pentagon, drummer, what a bicentennial drummer is. And, I've been like really getting into quite a bit, about it. And I've been thinking about, certain songs, but like my own original music, but sometimes I've a little bit of humor that's like an automatic identifier in my mind, since I like, like really throughout the years, the standards that I've really chosen for myself as a drummer and a singer. Very rarely country, but yeah, I listen to it too, and I do play it and practice it whenever I feel like it. Excuse me, but yeah. Anyway, so like um, as far as like that goes, like I'm really beyond 3,000 uh, songs of like probably more than pretty close to 200 band singers and yeah, um, yeah, performing artists that way. And my original music is kind of like, I've been kind of like really, it's not that I want to, but I've really been having to put like a hold on. I'm not wanting to for the mere sake of perception of, whether .com, or, how like it seemed to be like an Apple iPhone SE. It's kind of like it's only been out since the year 2020. And I've been like, so like really involved with like my memory because of alphanumerics and linguistics that really began in June of 1992. It really originated from a June 14th, 1992 experience, okay? And quite a bit that I've already spoken about on my YouTube.com channel, Wade ASV, Pretty PRIDDY, and Wade ASV, Pretty PRIDDY 192. And both channels are like in coordination with each other, but everything on the Wade ASV PRIDDY 192 is predominantly me speaking, because I'm really, there's a lot I need to do, and I'm looking at a lot of, think about venue and fixture, and whether if venue and province is really, the real deal about the redundant frequency and what that is to the RF and the 24, or the Apple iPhone SE and the front lines of the beachfront, and computer architecture, platform, embedding encryption in the way of like my thought of even what a kernel dictates. Somewhere in my mind, like I've mentioned before, I'm gonna have to actually think about it. Maybe if I can find information that's going to like really be the academic thing, and identify what's in my mind as the four corners of the four corners of the earth, and what that is to like continental reality about what the equator is in that way, or if it's like an integrating factor of my what I really want to know before I really start talking about it is the kernel. Somewhere in my mind it's like almost like a spherical quadrant in a way of like perfect 90-degree right angles. And my thought of what the equator is to that, to a 90-degree, which is like something about the equator equaling to the the circular of a longitude, equating to what longitude is equal to each other all the way around the Earth vertically, and that would be the one and only equator, horizontal, and a 90-degree right angle that way. So anyway, I'm like thinking about that right now because some of the information is involving obviously networking, or my memory what classifieds really seem to really be, and what the legal media and deposition is to like the West Loop 610, the Highway 59 of Univision, and the Houston Post. And what auditing legal media and deposition is to Loop 610, West Loop 610, and Highway 59 Highway 59 being alphanumerics 140 in Pearland, Texas, attenuation, alphanumerics, and Purple Heart, and I mean, list goes on and on. Quite a bit about holy miracles and geographic attachment, through bibliography, Christianity, absolute Christianity, and Christian Science, and academic degree things about that practical application and integration. So I mean, like really kind of like look at quite a bit when I think about a lot that I've already looked at. Yeah, so and like the big deal, like really, it seems to be like really, something about the third and fourth generation, like biblical prophecy, seemingly really in the history of the television screen, being from like monochrome or black and white in the way of what only contrast would dictate. Maybe if contrast would be, representative of some similarity of brightness. That way, even the silver silk screen in that way, or what Technicolor is to, I mean, all the colors of like Technicolor or pastel, and pastel being 73, Harris, Egypt, Israeli, and all the connectivity of the Christianity thing, absolute Christianity, and Deep Star 6, of like night vision and Abraham Lincoln that way, being ultimately, Abraham Lincoln being the only one that I know of that studied in the dark, okay? My thing about the night vision and 13 band graphic equalizer and the 13 colonies of American history, 13 being like 99 and telepathic, and quite a bit about gesture that Chevy Chase, I mean, he was like one of the predominant that kind of focused a little bit more on the Native American Indian and gesture that way. As far as my memory goes, and Chevy Chase's name is like 99 anyway, but like the 13 and 13 stars on the backside of the U.S. $1 bill, 13 being 99 that way, and Chevy Chase being like in Washington, D.C. as a street, normally associated almost immediately involved with like the U.S. Department of Education and student loans, and quite a bit about the guarantors and guaranteed loans and what that is to terminology, even like a distinguishing the difference between grants, annuities, or methods of forbearance, and what all that is. I mean, in practical application, even to the SSI deal of even where I'm at, like right now, something about the Apple iPhone SE and the difference between the ERISA statute and the IRA, being the SE. What that is, pronunciation is vision, imperfect 1010 clarity, or like the ERISA statute and the IRA involving somewhere in my mind the thought of like a fine arts and humanities. Theming question, is that invisible ink or glow in the dark toilet paper? I mean, it's kind of like something quite a bit about, or is it the 1040 EZ? The thing of it is that really, is that like a comparable reference to like a 1040 EZ and what annuity really is, that doesn't, it's like non-taxable income at a level, yet to such a greatness and magnitude. Likewise, if it's going to be the intelligence opposite, like in telepathic phase thing, or the Pentagon Reserve reverse, and all that stuff about even the algebraic test of inversion, really not necessarily based upon practical application of algebra itself, although the algebraic test of inversion is I mean, it's the whole entire point of algebra, is finding the unknown. It's so like very stressed in algebra, finding the unknown using variables, normally x and y predominantly, sometimes z. In any case, it obviously gets into the exponential quotients and rules that apply to like nomial, binomial, and trinomials, or in my mind, some comparable reference of the Audi axis, and not limited to in any kind of way. But the thing of it is that the exclusionary rule provision, it's like something about, I was like really starting to get on. It's like the history of the television screen, and what biblical reference to the third and fourth generation might only mean to great grandparents, or grandparents and parental PG-13 rating, the third and fourth generation, like in my birth year, 1964. And Wyatt Earp is like really that way, and what Earp is to the exclusionary rule provision of executive powers, governmental amnesties, and sovereign immunities, and what Wyatt Earp is to even the Lord's Supper, or ERP technology, and really I wasn't quite aware of ERP technology, but I mean, it automatically seemed to be the thing about 39 in ERP, in Angel, and binary numbers being 1 and 0, or 10, 10 numerical value itself, like Interstate I-10, running through Houston from like Los Angeles all the way, to Florida, or the binary numbers being 1 and 0, or even region 1 and 0 of like a a motion picture of like the United States and Canada, and zero being like the entire English speaking world, okay, and what operator and equator is to all that, and Alphanumeric's 108 and 64 that way. So anyway, like I was like really thinking quite a bit about it, and I was like finding some humor in some of this stuff, but really some of the original music that I'm really going to go ahead and just start into, and really my thoughts of like using my standards that I chose as myself, like throughout my years, like practicing my drums and singing, um, which I have on my YouTube.com channel, WadeASV Pretty, PRIDDY, and I'm talking quite a bit more than really I'd even anticipated, but using YouTube.com for a music video, using YouTube.com for a music video portfolio based upon the standards, and getting into my original music is obviously what I want to really, I mean, obviously, but yeah, so I'm kind of like I'm pending on quite a bit, and have been on hold, and really, it's only really because of a perception of like whether or not if a .com or the 24 thing of like homeowners association or GMAC promissory notes is the issue of like the perception. I mean, is it really? I mean, it seems to be like really whether or not if a .com or promissory or a .compromise or compromissory note or I mean. Really, I mean, making a grade beyond, the internet protocol of a local area network seems to be like so much about maybe what, maybe even the, oh God, the memorial would represent as a surface, even a level of an electronic grid of the RF, and that's what I'm thinking. And like really my thought about having and actually a commercial venue. And really, how true it is if venues really describing a building or commercial venue in the way of communications and what television is as a fixture in real estate or an easement of international law that provides the thought of what the dimensional clause is to like Washington D.C. or like an electronic odd or television in D.C. being a direct circuit or dimensional clause with the initial or the abbreviation or acronym the D.C. D4 and C3 being like a total of 7, what 7 is to, the 7 layers of the atmosphere and like the Statue of Liberty, ultimately getting to, the euro dollar, and a little bit of humor about, political science, sometimes using the thing about Iowa, and what my thoughts of, maybe a caucus is or is not, the Iowa caucus, or the New Bags Iowa thing about the euro dollar, the Iowa and the euro. yeah. So anyway, yeah. So like anyway, like I was like thinking about the deal about the third and fourth generation in the King James Version Bible of the great grandparents, the grandparents, and the parental thing. Ultimately, being the thing about the my birth year. Okay, what that is too. The Alphanumeric's a 30 or like Vantage Love 30. It seems to be like the deal about the marginal spread of the tennis court, or what two people might be representative in the way of like all that PGE 13 as well as the parental guidance or the presidential governors. That way, 13 and 13 colonies, 13 stars on the backside of the U.S. $1 bill, and the alphanumerics of like 13 being 99 and telepathic, and a TP in the way of a Native American Indian, ultimately getting to the Statue of Liberty. Anyway, yeah, so like I mean, like I've been thinking about that, but anyway, it's like once again, I'm getting back to the history of the television screen and what Technicolor and every color being passed down, and think about the Israeli flag and Deep Star 6, and what that is to like even the Ten Commandments with like Moses and like Pharaoh and Charlton Heston and like Yul Brynner, and ultimately what the bird is to even the pagan idolatry, or really what the deal is with like even the game Battleship, and what color codes is to what a practical application in my mind, what pagan idolatry, or even the representation of a liturgy is like a word that I choose, not limited to religion, a public form of worship. Yeah, or really what even like television is in so very many ways. Not necessarily a VPN, that might be even the thought of like a vice president network, or maybe exactly that, and maybe I choose really not to use the virtual. I mean, it would seem a little bit more ergonomic than the accusation. Hey, you needed like a real people person job, a placement, beyond the opportunity of like the non-degreed. Oh my God, or the international, like, hey, it's kind of like, hey, there's fair use and there's access easements, so like I, decided to like, say what I have to say about it. So anyway, so like yeah, so like the history of the television screen being the black and white, the monochrome, or during the Technicolor and the pastels and all that Harris in Egypt and Israeli, the Houston, Texas, Alphamere's 181 and Electronic Power We International, and what entertainment law really is in that way, and what the television is to a venue or a province or a fixture in real estate that provides that. And my thought of going beyond like a neighborhood or a residential area, that even terminology and networking in my mind is obviously identifying in my mind like a Purple Mountain's majesty is a plateau, not necessarily the one day religious thing of like a mistletoe on Christmas or normally on building high rise normally what's normally identified when a high rise is completed is like the tree on top of it when it's completed, normally associated in a lot of people's mind as a holiday, as a Christmas tree, or really what the structure is, okay? Because it seemed to be like something of structure in the way of what that tree on top of the high rise when it's completed really suggests as going beyond, the holiday when like that's all still there, yet the tree is like the real deal, beyond the wilderness. I mean, for real, okay. And the thing of it is that um, in my mind, like the history of the television screen being the black and white, the Technicolor, and the color, and what that is to like auditing legal media and deposition, or what the SAN software is, the storage area network, as compared to the securities and annuities, and what a current affair is, and all that stuff. So anyway, like I was thinking about that because Wyatt Earp and the hop scene, um, the chef, and the chef is the hop scene thing, and what Oriental is. My thoughts of like the star furniture different by design because the absolute values are going to an algorithm, like I said mentioned before, going through algebra, using the absolute values that were an algorithm being introduced that way with it. um, Not that I actually remember really even using an algorithm truthfully at all in algebra, yet going through calculus on into quantum beyond my thoughts of like maybe a limit of even the United States Supreme Court as far as like original content of its thing about jurisdiction or boundaries and limitations that would present the actual limitations of what a 13 band graphic equalizer is, and measuring cycles per second and oscillation of like a spectrum of bandwidth. It may be the variation of that very fact of the 13 band graphic equalizer ultimately getting to Abraham Lincoln in the night vision, and like Olivia Newton-John better shape up because she needs a man. It's like the Lincoln Continental hood ornament in that rectangle, and what a 90-degree right angle is to like normally when high-rise buildings identify themselves are like huge commercial venues, or maybe even sometimes even the commercial venue of living quarters and living in it and everything about um, you know, really what I'm looking at, really would like to have, and hopefully will be like the thing about it, and very much about the music video and everything about the entertainment law and venue and everything I've been speaking about on my YouTube channel. And yay, all right, the 75th floor, yay, Vision's Tower of Power, yeah, Vision's Tower high-rise building, yeah, the 75th floor thing about visions, yeah. It's kind of like the biblical scriptures in the last days. Young men will dream dreams and have visions. Yeah, so like I thought that like would be like a real good deal about having the visions thing for real. But yeah, yeah. So like I was like, hey, why not Pearland, Texas? Like right here, right? So anyway, like it's like not limited to, but anyway, yeah. Back to the deal about the television screen and the history about it, and like Wyatt Earp and John Wayne, and Hopsing being the deal about in my mind, the white arch. Um, the 1965 thing in my mind about the white arch in St. Louis, or even the bird about the cardinal, and color code that way. Um, yeah, so anyway, yeah, so I was wanting to keep that in mind, and I wanted to like do it again real quick, and I'm probably going to like not to throw all this in. I just wanted to make note of this while I'm thinking about it and go over it before. If I'm going to like just like go ahead and upload this and get back on a couple of like songs about uh, words and phrases in the way of like got some oceanfront property in Arizona, got some oceanfront property in Arizona, or is it a Freddie Prinze Chico Stick Society? Got some oceanfront property in Arizona. If the drum major control that, I'll throw in yes, the perfect 10-10. And I'm gonna have to think about it. I'm gonna have to practice this part. And if the drum major control that, I'll throw in a perfect 10-10. Panoramic PeripheralAxis in for free. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to like work on that a little bit. But anyway, I wanted to get that in and think about it because Freddie Prinze being the thing about the Chico and the Man thing, and really a little bit of humor about some fine upstanding deal about it. Yeah. So and what that is to Abraham Lincoln and the front lines of the beach, trying to color code that way. I mean, it's so for real, right? But anyway, yeah. So but yeah, I was wanting to do the Star Furniture deal about the different by design real quick while I was thinking about it. It's because like the E is like different in design and the structure of certain formulas involving attenuation and digital signal processing and processing speed is the Star Furniture different by design. The E that's in the structure and computation of the formula itself. And the structure itself, I mean, it's like so very much. And when I was looking at it, it's kind of like I mean, I noticed that, and it seemed to be like something in my mind of like one of the bigger shipments in the Port of Houston of the Chevrolet uh, um, Geo Prism and the Hyundai Excel, and what Japanese the 71 in Pearland is to the alphabet. And as far as I know, as far as the information that I've been available to, as available that I've had access to, is that there's like only 22 letters in the Japanese alphabet. How true that is, I'm not from Japan, and I really do not speak Japanese, but really in English, I mean Japanese is 71 like Pearland and a secret and certain factors that I've looked at and certain deal about the Star Furniture like different by design, and the E is the different by design thing about the formula itself and what the different by design E is in value, and the structure being so very much of the appearance of like a Japanese letter. It all looks symbolic to me, but in any case, there's like 22 um, letters in Japanese alphabet according to like my English information that's available. But 22 is almost like the Roosevelt New Deal Act and the FDIC and RCA and CAR and all that, ultimately getting to the transportation deal and the plenipotentiary and what that is to a potentiometer and IBM, right? And bandwidth and spectrum, that way of like signal strength, and the word attenuation, because you see in attenuation, it's alphanumeric 140 with that UA taken out of it. It's like the attention, the salute, the absolute salute thing about the attention, and the UA being like 21 and 1 being 22, and what that is to the FDIC and the RCA thing, and um, processing speed of like digital signal processing and waveform beyond measuring cycles per second and oscillation. In my mind, like the 13-band graphic equalizer, ultimately getting to, even the Mork from Mork, Robin Williams and Pam Dauber, and like Mork and Mindy, and beyond the monogamous eggnog crusade thing about the sounds about Nanu Nanu, and what the only Nanu Nanu about measuring like a night vision and even the color code of like a pastel green in like world history, a province being the pastel green and ambience. And 13-band graphic equalizer is the only one that I really know of that has the only two of impedance, being the pastel, red of nano units, which is also used in like night vision, as well as the nano luminance of like the pastel green. And those are the only two that are the only two on the 13-band graphic equalizer as a digital readout, not a digital readout display, but identified with the measurement of LED light. And ultimately now it's getting to like even the word in the Book of Thessalonians, and has been, and really even before the home theater came out, like I was studying like that and like re-entering heaven. It's like almost the entire point of like Christianity is like re-entering heaven, or the thought of like hey, why aren't you already there, kind of like that. But anyway, so that one word transfiguration being alphanumeric 192, or a pentagon drummer, or a telepathic drummer, or a bicentennial drummer, or what alphanumeric is to the word transfiguration in Christianity, or beyond the separation between church and state of the 12 Federal Reserve Banks, the United States codes annotated, and all that color coded stuff between like the operator at alphanumeric 108 and 0 being 64 and HTTP : in Zion 1,000 years of peace. Likewise, in addition, the operator being 108 in Chevrolet, and bicentennial, all that stuff about 108 and that way. And yeah, even the HTTP being the alphanumerics of 64 of 0 being the operator, likewise in addition. But anyway, so I mean, like I was kind of like really thinking about quite a bit about that. And that way, my birth year being like 1964, and like, hey, it's like the two numbers being used in sequencing characterization in sets of 4, um, being like 19 and 64 being alphanumerics of 83, and you winner, yeah, all right, yeah. And what Vantage 1230 is to, like, all that, and tennis and the marginal spread, and getting on into the baseball, and seemingly so deal about the infinite lines, yay, ultimately get into the figure 8 and the perfect 10-10 vision thing of the perfect 9-degree right angles of symmetrical, asymmetrical, ultimately in my mind getting to the kernel of a partition. And I'm going to have to actually think about it, between the Lincoln and the kennel, the erasement of the letters and pronunciation of, like, Abraham being like the only name likewise of a president, and like even in the King James Version Bible of, like, Sarah, Abraham, and Sarah, and even Joseph that way, and alphanumerics of, like, that, and Sarah being identified as, like, if not the most beautiful woman in the entire King James Version Bible, okay, and what Sarah is to Abraham. In my mind, the syllable of giving the appearance of equivalent, almost the algebraic test of inversion. The whole entire point: does the answer equal the results? And Abraham being like a syllable of 22 and 22, or what Vic's formula 44 is. So, even oath or hidden, which is sometimes inadvertently associated with the word escrow, or heart God, or FBI miracle that way. Yeah, so like I really kind of like think about stuff like that. In any case, so it's kind of like ultimately it's getting to that point. It's already gone like a little bit longer than I already originally planned on. But anyway, so I'm kind of like thinking about a lot of that, because ultimately getting back to the word attenuation and digital signal processing of waveform, and that UA being like 22, or RCA or FDIC, and the alphanumerics 140 with the UA in attenuation or attention, an absolute salute, and what that is to the pi r squared. Yeah, or the 180-degree, like, panoramic peripheral academia of some ambidextrous, thing about the VTwin Figure8 drumstick twirl, and like a drummer, beyond, getting into the signal processing of digital signal processing and waveform. And that different by design thing, and I just wanted to say this one more time, and I'm going to take a break before I decide if I'm going to do any more for a while. But anyway, getting into that different by design E and the structure, because Japanese being 71, and like Oriental and orientation, and when it's like looking at the quantum, I mean, I wasn't even looking for what I'm talking about right now. But when I saw that E, it was like an automatic deal about the commercial, star furniture different by design, likewise the structure being recognizably giving the impression of, like, symbolic representation, if not the exact, of, like, Japanese letters. And uh, ultimately it's getting to, like, the UA and the attenuation being 22, and the 22 letters identified of Japanese letters that way, and symbolic representation even on the backside of the US $1 bill, or even the Zilton symbol, seemingly like automatically the Geneva, Switzerland thing, and the summit meetings of the real deal about the not limited to, but yes, the International Electronic Engineering of, like, probably the one, likewise, even one of the James Bond movies that's probably the one and only that's not even about the Bond or the James Bond thing, really, truthfully, at all. It's like, yeah, something about that. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, or what, annuity is as compared to, or what, places like the thought of, like, jurisdiction, and really the freedom not associated with anything other, or the litigation, not necessarily being de facto, although, all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. I mean, litigation is an automatic corporate law term. Litigation, I mean, it's automatically corporate law, and corporate law, I mean, are defined normally as eternal entities, structures. Corporate is pretty much quite a bit in about the eternal thing, and ultimately corporate law ultimately gets to the deal about what's available as information normally, in my mind, of opportunity, not necessarily the degree level, but yet available information as like a base foundation of, like, where annuity is defined as a source of an eternal factor of, like, structure and building, what corporations truthfully are about, and corporate law, even like a ecclesiastical implication, of, like, clergy in a way, in a religious way, of, like, eternal structures and corporations and identity and even anatomy and genetics and yeah. So I mean, the corporate law is like an automatic deal about the 12 tribes of Israel in my mind, and 12,000 in each tribe. And my thing about being a musician in the tribe of Judah, okay, and a little bit of humor about, don't mean to sound like a promiscuous tambourine with a cover charge or, or antisocial drumhead, but, hey, but anyway, yeah, so like, yeah, so in any case, yeah, so, is it the Ringo Starr you're looking for, yeah? But anyway, yeah, so, yeah, so I was thinking about the tribe of Judah in that way, and I was ultimately, I really focused a little bit more on the thing about the tribe of Reuben for it being about the scribes, going all the way, beyond the hieroglyphics and the biometrics and light scribe and ultimately getting to the isometrics of like even astrology and three-dimensional isometrics of scribes, even like in biblical times, whether even if it's identified that or not, using the stars to navigate, for travel. And it's automatic isometric in astrology, like now today. So, like, I kind of like looked at it that way, and what even light scribe is to invisible programming, comparable to even certain, toner that's used in like copy and process of electronic charge, giving the impression that's invisible, yet it's on like either an orange cambium or a silver selenium type of drum that presents an electrical charge, and when the light actually shines on it one way, it will like reflect off of anything that's not like black or colored, and dissipate all the charge with the remaining of an electrical charge, which is normally the letters you see on a piece of paper going through a copier process. Okay, but all that's like invisible on the drum, yet comparable to light scribe, beyond light scribe itself, of invisible programming. And that's the deal about the way I think about quite a bit of United States Secretary of Treasury Robert E. Rubin that way. Even a biblical, ultimately getting to a corporate thing about like eternal structure. Yeah, so I mean, that's really what corporations are, valued based upon like eternal factors of structure. Likewise, in addition, genetics and anatomy and appearance, and what the even a structure given that way is set up for that purpose, whether it's a known or not known fact of like what availability means to placement and position in that way, representative that way, whether even if it's a known or not known fact, yeah, based upon achieving whatever requirement it is, not necessarily an automatic thing of given of like generation and generation of like an eternal thing about the corporations that way, yeah. So sometimes even the public and private structure that way of what the requirements are of actually accomplishing, acquiring, and having a position in that way. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, so like that's what I'm talking about, like fixture in a real estate, what that is to like a neighborhood, and all this stuff like I studied, and it's kind of like amazing. It's so ridiculously not funny sometimes to think like personally, I mean, it like really woke me up when I started making my music videos, because when it really became seriously ridiculously something that I really already knew, but that served as a constant reminder, and I hadn't forgot it. But this one guy walked up to me and said, "Hey, Wade." I mean, I never seen him before. I don't think I ever seen or met him before, but he knew who I was. And he said, "Hey, Wade, man, hey, you already know. Believe me, you already know, man. You already know. Believe me, you do, okay?" And just like walks off, okay? And it's like so out of the norm, but like years and years later, I'm like making a prep for like a music video portfolio in preparation. When it really became obvious something about the SD card, or the terabyte being 1,024 gigabytes, and what that is to even a principle of like binary numbers being only two numbers being used, 1 and 0 for 16 characterization sets of 4, or paired up that way, or what 1,024 gigabytes is to like a 10 and 24 being 34, or like one, or that US $1 bill, or the third and fourth generation. Or like or like FM 1128 is like only about like probably 5/8 of a mile from here, where I'm at here in Pearland. 1128, and it got to the point that the difference between like FM 1128 and 1024 gigabytes is like 104 in electronic, and annuity and like taxation. It would seem to be the big deal about Advantage Love 30, and something about the code 10 of like a taxation code 10 and annuity code 10, electronic code 10, ultimately getting to the thing about itemization, alphanumeric 141, and expenditures, going beyond business and corporate law, stimulate the big deal of like Geneva, Switzerland, and human capital, going through a circuit, and like human civil rights of uh, uh, going through a circuit, and what that television is or is not on a daily basis, maybe recognizing something about it in a way that it's really not supposed to be, but it really is, and really not at the same time, and back and forth, and there's a real serious practical application that way of entertainment law and reality of how law is really practiced, and what that is to even enforcing like annotation. When annotation's enforced, it's like innovation's not a question. I mean, it seems to be ultimately what it has ultimately led to was just like the fact about it. Yeah. So anyway, I thought about like litigation and the fact. I mean, like predominantly when I was like studying the United States Codes, United States Supreme Court Southwest Court Reporter, it seemed to be like my focus of attention for many reasons. But ultimately, we got to um, the 247 degree because like years and years and years of like studying alphanumerics, like like 5, 6, maybe even 7 years before I even like started using linguistics with the alphanumerics and then combining it, and then like years and years later combining those and realizing that the principle we had become really a mandatory requirement, and then like combining the practical application of practical application of like principles involved with all that. Then in addition, analytical and all that. I mean, like really got into some like serious in-depth like comprehension about all the alphanumerics and linguistics that way. And in any case, so it kind of like got to the point about the litigation, and it's always given the impression that the de facto seems to be like the big deal, whether if not the intellectual deal about the human capital is like the real deal about the whether or not it's de facto is only a principle of like why a patent is not a copyright, or like why Bitcoin is not cryptocurrency, or why the Fifth Amendment is not a non-profit organization, and the list goes on and on about um, the the comparison in that way, or what ratio is, or given the appearance of, or but denying the power thereof, or what it is when it means what it means, or supposed to mean anyway. Um, yeah, so like I was thinking about that because normally, like in the United States Supreme Court Southwest Court Reporter, litigation and de facto, or like normally, I mean, always like given the appearance that they were used together, but in reality, I mean, really, ultimately, during the deal that ultimately had led to like knowing that really litigation isn't necessarily de facto at all, yet it seems to be the deal of international law, what having fair use of access easement is, or what third person is in proper English grammatical composition, or an easement set up that would even represent, distinguish the difference between what ESCO is or is not of international floating accounts, or what an easement is of value, and what duration of intellectual might only suggest is maybe what lifespan only means. Whether if importing and exporting is whether citizenship and birthrights is only tr- tran uh, non-negotiable, non-transferable in a way of like a normal, North American Free Trade Act, like a daily transaction in the bank, identifying whether even if a direct deposit is questionable based upon, its practical application of the history of a mailbox or a rural route in that way, or what a routing number is to an account number. I mean, it's almost like, the entire point of like litigation and de facto. The account number stays the same, but, it's happened to me before. My routing number had been changed, and I didn't even know what the heck was going on. And it was like an expensive experience because, like, having online automatic bill pay, entering like the routing number and the account number, I couldn't even access my own information once it was entered for automatic bill pay. I didn't even know what was going on. I don't even write checks on a checking account. I still didn't even know what was going on. And I went to the bank and I found out that my routing number had been changed, and I didn't even do it. They wouldn't even acknowledge it even happening. As a matter of fact, they actually refused. I mean, I went to like every Wells Fargo. It happened to me several times. Even Chase Bank, yeah. And now it's kind of like, you've heard it before, Chase is everywhere you want to be. And now it seems like everywhere I go, Wells Fargo's everywhere. And every bank that I go to, it's kind of like, are you kidding me? It's like you like trying to like, have an umbilical cord like linked to the bank, or something like a Abraham Lincoln, like a link on and Art Linkletter, link on Linkletter, thing about it, yeah. Really, so like it's kind of like, get on, beyond the banking system, right? So anyway, yeah, so it's kind of like the deal about that seemed to be like really not funny about the situation, really, to be honest with you, yeah. So, I mean, it's ultimately getting to like the part about the litigation de facto in that way. Um, Even a checking account, the history of a mailbox a rural route, or what the exclusionary rule provision is to executive powers, sovereign immunities, and governmental amnesties of, like, I mean, Wyatt Earp, some black and white stuff, somewhere strolling through, some mediation of, like, pastel colors and Technicolor, and making it to, like, the live on air auditing. Auditing legal media and deposition, right? It's like, you got to be seriously not funny, right? So anyway, yeah. So anyway, it's kind of like it had got to contesting whether or not even if a bank is actually using, like, the whole entire situation, and whether it's only an option of an acronym of a DBA being the accusation of a doing business as, or a database administration, or, like, who's going to believe who, kind of like between a degree or non-degree issue. I mean, who's academic and who's not, and really, I mean, who's going to act like an idiot all of a sudden? Really, is what it really ultimately is getting to, isn't it? So in any case, yeah. So yeah. So I mean, really, it's always been the accusation, whether it's a known or not known fact. Hey, it's not the excuse. I mean, it's already been a proven experience of mine, whether the intent would be anything other than maybe someone like that doesn't want to be themselves. But all that's like, I mean, like, it's like the American, Family Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. You got to be kidding me. A Big Ten winner, really. This is ultimately getting to, like, the 5-star thing about the equator and the 9-degree right angle, and yeah, globalization, and, like, international financial management, and it's like, I'm just thinking about the partition, what the partition is to, like, the colonel, or Abraham Lincoln, and rearranging the letters and pronunciation of, like, Lincoln being the kennel, and what the R is to the country and the county, and applied to, like, the kennel being the colonel. In my mind, something about a partition. I'm going to have to actually really decide if the four corners of the earth, and something about integration is really something about the history of a television screen, or the architecture platform embedding encryption that way, or what the equator really is on a degree level, and what opportunity might only mean to only what available information might only seem to be of a partition. Seems to be, like, ultimately getting to a real big issue of dimensional clause of DC direct circuit, and what Washington is to the Alphanix 130, or a telepathic map, a telepathic Bible, a telepathic eagle, television, electronic God, that way of, like, DC being a direct circuit and dimensional clause, going to, a little bit beyond during Christ, and what the separation between church and state really is ultimately seemingly getting to, for real. So yeah, so anyway, like, it's already going on, like, 47 minutes longer than I already, like, anticipated, but yeah. And so, like, I'm going to try and, like, decide if my memory's going to be, adequate about the kernel, or a partition, whether if it's integrated, or whether if it's the factor of whether terminology of, like, is it elite, obsolete, or a pronunciation, whether it's, gee, what's open for a long chain, is it a delete or a delete? Is it lit? Is it litigation? Is it, like, is it delight? The plane? Is it like Fantasy Island? Like, yeah. Sure, anyway, yeah. So anyway, it's kind of like it's ultimately getting to, is it obsolete? Is it delete, or, like, delight? Is it like, gee, I was hoping for a long chain? It's kind of like, wow. Are you kidding me? It's like, it's a delight. It's not really deleted. It's not obsolete. It's like a delight, yeah. It's like walk delight, right? It's not necessarily obsolete or delete, right? It's like, gee, I was hoping for a long chain watch, but hey, how about that Jehovah's Witness watch, all right? Like, wow. Sure. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, so a little bit of humor ultimately getting to the dire, the Bering Straits, and the infinity and the ice skating, and the thing about, the Figure8, and some, like, thing about the 90-degree right angles, likewise, in addition to the Bering Straits, and some humor about the Mount Olives, and getting all into the forbearance of, like, terminology, even to the Department of Education, going beyond, the academics of what might, thoroughly prove, hey, you need to know whether or not at degree levels, the only accusation of opportunity, hey, you never left high school as a non-degreed. It's kind of like you have diplomatic immunity, but, like, really, it's like, do you even want it? When the only place where it's happening is, like, you kidding me? You have diplomatic immunity, do you really? Sure, yeah. Sure, yeah. Diplomatic immunity, you kidding me? Wow, it's like telling John Wayne, hey, fella, this is the breakthrough you're looking for, some almost artesian calmness, right? It's kind of like, You know, hey, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So great. Okay. So it's not the unicorn you're looking for. It's virtue at the Statue of Liberty, huh? Yeah. Right. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna take a break right now, and it's already going on like right at 50 minutes right now. So I'm gonna take a break right now. Talk to you later.